Hey everyone, in this tutorial I'll talk about tuples in Python. Tuples, or sometimes pronounced tuples, are another essential data structure in Python, and they have some unique characteristics that make them different from lists. So tuples are similar to lists in that they can store multiple elements, but they have one crucial difference: they're immutable. This means that once you create a tuple, you cannot change its elements, add new items, or remove existing ones. Besides that, tuples and lists are almost the same. Tuples are represented using parentheses instead of straight brackets, and elements are separated by commas, just like in lists. Let's create a couple of examples to get a better sense of their syntax. So we can have fruits equal to the tuple, apple, banana, and orange. And we can have another one called dimensions, and that'll be equal to 10, 20, and 30. So these are both tuples, and we can print fruits, for example, and then dimensions, and you can see that it prints out the same way as lists. If you'll notice, you can't change one of the values, so if I try to reference fruits and the second item, which is banana, and I tried to set that equal to strawberry, I get an error because tuple doesn't support item assignment. That's because they're mutable, you can't change the values of them. Just like with lists, we can access individual elements in a tuple using indexing. Our fruits one again, and we can print fruits 0, which is the first item, and then we can also do slicing like we learned before, 0 to 2. In the first example, we got the first item. In the second example, we got from the first item up to but not including the third item. Now we're going to learn something new about both lists and tuples. A cool feature is that lists and tuples both support something called packing and unpacking. Packing is when you assign multiple values to a single tuple variable or list, so that's just when you're creating a list, and unpacking is when you extract those values back into separate variables. Here's an example of tuple packing and unpacking. So dimensions is equal to 10, 20, and 30. We can unpack this, so we just packed it like this. We can unpack it by setting length, width, and height to dimensions. If this looks strange, all it's doing is setting these three variables equal to each value in dimensions in the order we place the variables. And note that dimensions has to be the same exact length as how many variables you have and vice versa. The reason you don't really see this as much with lists is because tuples are immutable, so you're going to always know that there's 3 items. However, you can still do this with lists. It would still work. I could just change these to these brackets and it would still do the exact same thing. But you see this more often with tuples because it just makes more sense, and you'll learn later in this video the difference between why you would use tuples versus lists. But you commonly see unpacking and packing only with tuples because the length will never change, so this will never have an error. Print each variable to show you that it worked. Now I get 10, 20, 30. Since tuples are immutable, they have fewer built-in methods compared to lists, but there are still a few useful ones, including ones you already know that work with lists. The length function works with tuples as well, and it returns the number of elements in a tuple. Here we have fruits again, and length can be set to the length of fruits, and now we can print length. Now we get 3 because there's 3 items. Of course, like always, you don't have to set this to a separate variable. You could just do it like this, and it still works the same. The count method returns the number of occurrences of a specified element in the tuple. So let's create a tuple called numbers and set that equal to a tuple containing 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, and 4. So it's got 3 2's in it, and we'll use the count method to actually count how many of these are. So we'll have a variable called count 2's, and that's equal to numbers.count2, because we're counting how many occurrences of 2 there are. And now we'll just print that to C, and we get 3, because there is 1, 2, and 3 occurrences of 2 in the tuple. Now let's learn a new function called index. This one works with strings and lists as well, and it returns the index of the first occurrence of a specified element in the tuple. So here we have our fruits tuple again, and we can set index banana equal to fruits.index banana. So this is getting the index of a certain element in the list. and it'll get 1 because that's index 1. Now that we've learned about tuples and their features, you might be wondering why we need them when we already have lists. Isn't it better to have the ability to change the items anyway? Well, tuples have unique advantages over lists. First of all, they're immutable, which makes them useful for protecting data that should not be changed throughout the program. They are faster and consume less memory compared to lists, making them ideal for storing constant data. When should you use tuples, and when should you use lists? It depends on the situation. If you have a collection of items that should remain constant throughout the program, use a tuple. So if you're trying to protect the data, like I said before, or you just know that it's never going to change, what you will do because it improves performance to use a tuple instead of a list. But on the other hand, if you actually need to change the items, then use a list because they are mutable, not immutable.